Hi, I'm Sarah. Today I'm going to read you the story of Tiffany, which is titled like this. At Christmas dinner, my parents gave my sister an apartment, then handed me the mortgage papers. Prove you love your sister. I refused. A month later they sued me, demanding $280,000. But the judge asked them a few questions. Well, let's go. I'm Tiffany, 32 years old, and I thought this Christmas would be like any other. Same old house, same old decorations, same old family drama. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. Let me tell you about my family first. There's my parents, mom's 58, dad's 61. They've been married for 35 years and live in the same house I grew up in. Then there's my sister Sarah, she's 27. 5 years younger than me, but you'd think she was the princess of the family the way they treat her. She's got this boyfriend Jake, they've been together for 2 years now. Nice enough guy, I guess, but he's always sucking up to my parents. Growing up, it was always Sarah this, Sarah that. When I wanted to join the drama club in high school, Mom said we couldn't afford it. But when Sarah wanted dance lessons 3 years later, suddenly they found the money. When I graduated high school, I had to bust my ass to get a full scholarship for college. Sarah? They paid her full tuition without blinking. I've gotten used to it over the years. That's just how it is in our family. Sarah's the golden child, and I'm the responsible one who doesn't need help. So anyway, I drove over to their house on Christmas Eve. The whole extended family was there, Uncle Mike, Aunt Janet, my cousins Tom and Lisa, and Grandma Rose. Everyone was already drinking eggnog and talking loud like they do every year. Tiffany, Mom hugged me when I walked in. How's work going, honey? It's good, Mom, really good actually. I work in marketing for a tech company. I make decent money, live in a rented apartment, and I've been saving up to buy a place of my own. That's wonderful, dear, but she was already looking past me, checking if Sarah had arrived yet. I went to the kitchen to help set up dinner. That's when I noticed something weird. Mom and Dad kept looking at each other with these little smiles. And when Sarah showed up with Jake, they got all excited and started whispering. Sarah looked different too. She had this glow about her, like she knew something the rest of us didn't. She kept giggling with Jake and touching his arm. You okay, Sarah? I asked her. Yeah, I'm great, really great. She gave me this huge smile. Tonight's going to be amazing. I shrugged it off. Maybe Jake was finally going to propose or something. Good for them. We all sat down for dinner around 7 p.m. The table looked beautiful. Mom had used her good china and everything. Dad carved the turkey, Uncle Mike told his usual bad jokes, and Grandma Rose complained about her arthritis. Normal family stuff. I was halfway through my mashed potatoes when Mom suddenly stood up and tapped her wine glass with her fork. Everyone, can I have your attention please? The table got quiet, even Grandma Rose stopped talking. I have a wonderful surprise to share with all of you tonight. Mom's voice was shaking with excitement. Your father and I have been planning this for months. Dad stood up next to her, grinning like an idiot. We've bought a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside Heights for Sarah. The whole table erupted. Uncle Mike started clapping, Aunt Janet gasped, and the cousins were cheering. Even Grandma Rose was smiling. Oh my God, really? Sarah jumped up from her chair, but she wasn't surprised at all. She knew this was coming. Yes, sweetheart, it's all yours. Mom was crying happy tears now. I sat there with my fork halfway to my mouth, completely stunned. An apartment? They bought her an entire apartment? The closing is next week, Dad added. It's in a great neighborhood, close to shopping, and it has a gorgeous view of the park. Everyone was talking at once, asking questions about the apartment, congratulating Sarah. She was showing them pictures on her phone that she'd obviously already taken. This is so perfect, Sarah said, hugging Mom and Dad. Jake and I were just talking about how we needed more space. Well, you'll be needing it soon, Dad said with a wink. Since you're getting married. More cheering, more congratulations. Sarah was beaming, Jake was shaking Dad's hand, and everyone was acting like this was the best news ever. I clapped along with everyone else, but my hands felt numb. An apartment. They bought her an apartment. I'd been saving for years to buy my own place, and they just bought her one. Tiffany, isn't this wonderful? Mom called out to me. Yeah, it's great, I managed to say, really great, Sarah. Sarah ran over and hugged me. I'm so excited. I'm already planning the housewarming party. You'll all come, right? I'll invite everyone over as soon as we get settled. Of course we will, Uncle Mike said. Congratulations, kiddo. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They'd never given me anything like this. Hell, they'd never given me anything worth more than $100. But Sarah gets an apartment? The rest of dinner was all about the apartment. Sarah talked about decorating, Jake talked about the commute to his job, and my parents talked about how proud they were. I just sat there, eating my turkey and trying to look happy. Nobody asked me about my job, my life, or my plans. It was all Sarah, all the time. Just like always. I can't wait to have you all over, Sarah said again, it's going to be so much fun. We're so happy for you, honey, Mom said, squeezing Sarah's hand. I looked around the table at my family, all of them celebrating Sarah's good fortune. And I realized that some things never change. Sarah would always be the favorite, and I would always be the afterthought. After dinner, everyone spread out around the living room. The men were watching football, the women were looking at Sarah's apartment photos on her phone, and the kids were playing with their new Christmas presents. I helped Mom clear the dishes, trying to act normal. The apartment is really beautiful, I said, loading plates into the dishwasher. Isn't it? We looked at so many places before we found this one. Sarah's going to love it there. I nodded and kept washing dishes. What else could I say? About an hour later, Mom came over to where I was sitting with Grandma Rose. Tiffany, can you come help me in the kitchen for a minute? Sure, I followed her, thinking she needed help with dessert or something. But when I got to the kitchen, Dad was already there. He was holding a manila folder in his hands, and both of them looked serious. What's going on? I asked. Dad handed me the folder. These are for you. I opened it and saw a bunch of official-looking papers. Mortgage documents, loan applications, payment schedules. What is this? I flipped through the pages, confused. Those are the mortgage documents for Sarah's apartment, Mom said. I looked up at them. Okay, why are you giving them to me? Mom shrugged. Well, we only had enough money for the down payment. You need to pay the rest. Wait, hold on, I set the folder down on the counter. Are you telling me that you want me to pay Sarah's mortgage? They both nodded like this was the most normal thing in the world. We know you have a lot of savings, Mom said. You told us about them, and you make good money at your job. This won't be a big problem for you. Plus, Dad added, this is how you can prove that you love your sister. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate reality. I do have savings, but I'm saving that money to buy my own apartment. I've been planning to buy a place next year. Tiffany, please, Mom said. We're family, we need to stick together. I shook my head. No, I'm not paying someone else's mortgage. I've worked hard for my money, and I'm using it to buy my own place. Dad's face was turning red. The truth is, you don't even need your own apartment. You're 32 years old and you're still single. You don't have a boyfriend, you don't have any prospects. You're going to end up an old maid with no husband and no kids. The words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe he'd just said that. Sarah is young and beautiful, he continued. She has Jake, she has a future. She deserves this apartment more than you do. I stood there for a second, just staring at him. Then I looked at Mom, waiting for her to say something, to defend me. But she just stood there looking at the floor. I'm not paying Sarah's mortgage, I said. You're being selfish, Dad said. I picked up my coat and purse and headed for the door. Tiffany, where are you going? Sarah asked from the couch. I looked at her sitting there, all happy and excited about her free apartment that I was supposed to pay for. She had no idea what had just happened in the kitchen. "I'm not feeling well," I said. "I need to go home." I walked out the door without saying goodbye to anyone else. I could hear Mom and Dad talking to the family, probably making excuses for why I left so suddenly. The drive home was a blur. I kept thinking about what Dad had said. Old maid, no husband, no kids. Like my life was worthless because I wasn't married. I got to my apartment and just sat in my car for a while. The building was quiet, most people probably at their own family Christmas dinners. I went upstairs and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I sat on my couch and cried. I spent Christmas alone at home, thinking about how differently my parents had always treated me and Sarah. It had always been like this, since childhood. They'd shown in various ways that Sarah was more precious to them than me. Nothing had changed. The next morning, December 25th, my phone rang. It was Mom. For a second, I actually thought they were calling to apologize. "Tiffany, we need to talk," Mom said. "You behaved like a hysterical woman last night. We had to lie to all the guests and tell them you were feeling unwell. That's why you left so suddenly." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now? I'm bringing those documents to your apartment tomorrow. You need to sign them and start making the payments." "Mom, I already told you, I'm not paying Sarah's mortgage." "Yes, you are, this is what family does." "No, I'm not," I said it slowly and clearly. "I will never pay the mortgage for Sarah's apartment." I hung up. The phone started ringing again immediately. I didn't answer. Then it rang again, and again. I turned the volume off. Then the texts started coming. Dad texting me about family loyalty. Mom texting me about how disappointed they were. I didn't respond to any of them. The next day, my phone rang. It was Sarah. "Tiffany, I heard what happened," she said. "I can't believe how cruel you're being." "Cruel? My apartment is more important than your plans to buy your own place. You can always save up again later." I almost laughed. "Sarah, do you realize what you're asking me to do? If you really love me, you'll pay my mortgage. That's what sisters do for each other. What have you ever done for me?" "That's not the point. The point is that I need help and you're being selfish." I hung up on her. I immediately went to my phone settings and blocked all their numbers. Mom, Dad, Sarah, I was done. I didn't want to communicate with any of them anymore. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. For a whole month, everything was quiet. I actually started to relax. No phone calls, no texts, no drama. I went to work, came home, watched Netflix, and lived my life in peace. I even started looking at apartments online again, getting excited about my plans to buy my own place. I figured they'd finally understood that I wasn't going to change my mind. Maybe they'd found another way to handle Sarah's mortgage, or maybe they'd decided to sell the apartment. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I was wrong. On a Tuesday morning in late January, I was getting ready for work when I heard my mailman at the door. Nothing unusual, I always get mail on Tuesdays. But when I opened my mailbox, there was a certified letter mixed in with the usual bills and junk mail. The return address made my stomach drop. It was from a law firm I'd never heard of, Morrison, Klein and Associates. My hands were shaking as I opened it. The letterhead was all fancy and official looking. But the words on the page made me feel sick. "Dear Ms. Tiffany Johnson," it started. "We represent Mr. and Mrs. Robert and Linda Johnson in a matter concerning reimbursement for child-rearing expenses." Child-rearing expenses, what the hell? I kept reading. The letter said that my parents were suing me for $280,000. $280,000. For raising me and providing for my needs from birth to age 18. I had to sit down. This couldn't be real. Parents don't sue their kids for raising them, that's insane. But there it was, in black and white. They were demanding money for food, clothing, housing, medical care, education, and emotional support and guidance. They claimed I owed them this money because I was refusing to assist the family in their time of need despite their years of sacrifice. I read the letter 3 times, trying to make sense of it. This was about the mortgage. They were trying to scare me into paying for Sarah's apartment. My first thought was to drive over there and talk them out of it. Tell them this was crazy, that we could work something out. But then I realized, this was exactly what they wanted. They wanted me to panic and come running back, begging them to drop the lawsuit if I agreed to pay Sarah's mortgage. Instead, I called my friend Marcus. He's a lawyer, we went to college together. I figured he could at least tell me if this was as ridiculous as it sounded. Marcus, it's Tiffany, I need your help with something. Hey, what's up? My parents are suing me for $280,000. I told him the whole story. The Christmas dinner, the apartment, the mortgage documents, everything. He listened without interrupting. Jesus, Tiffany, that's insane. Can they actually do this? Can parents really sue their kids for raising them? They can try, but it's not going to work. Parents have a legal obligation to support their minor children. You can't charge someone for doing something you're legally required to do. So you think I'll win? I think this case is going to get thrown out so fast it'll make their heads spin. But we need to respond properly, don't ignore this. I felt a little better after talking to Marcus, but I was still in shock. My own parents were actually suing me over an apartment for Sarah. 2 months later, we were in court. I walked into the courthouse feeling nervous but determined. Marcus was with me, carrying his briefcase full of documents. My parents were already there with their lawyer, a thin guy in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sarah was sitting behind them in the gallery, giving me dirty looks. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Williams, the bailiff announced. Judge Williams was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and glasses. She looked no nonsense. This is the case of Johnson versus Johnson, she said, looking at her papers. The plaintiffs are seeking $280,000 from the defendant for child-rearing expenses. My parents' lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my clients raised the defendant from birth to age 18. They provided food, shelter, clothing, medical care, and education. They believe they are entitled to reimbursement for these expenses, especially given the defendant's refusal to assist the family financially. Judge Williams looked skeptical. Mr. Peterson, are you seriously arguing that parents can charge their children for basic parental duties? Well, Your Honor, the defendant has shown ingratitude and… That's not what I asked. I asked if you believe parents can charge their children for fulfilling their legal obligations. Mr. Peterson looked uncomfortable. The situation is more complex than that, Your Honor. Mr. Rodriguez, Judge Williams turned to Marcus. Thank you, Your Honor, this case should be dismissed immediately. Parents have a legal duty to support their minor children. California Family Code Section 3900 clearly states that parents must support their children. You cannot sue someone for reimbursement of expenses you were legally required to pay. The plaintiffs claim they went above and beyond basic support, Mr. Peterson said. In what way? Judge Williams asked. My parents' lawyer shuffled his papers. Well, they provided a loving home environment and… Mr. Peterson, let me ask the plaintiffs directly. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, how exactly did you assist your daughter after she turned 18? Dad stood up. Well, we supported her emotionally, Your Honor. Did you pay for her college education? No, but… Did you help her buy a car? No. Did you assist with rent or housing costs? No, she was always independent. Did you provide any financial assistance whatsoever after she reached the age of majority? Mom and Dad looked at each other, not directly, but we. Yes or no, please. No, Dad said quietly. Judge Williams turned to look at some papers Marcus had given her. Mr. Rodriguez, what do these documents show? Marcus stood up. Your Honor, These documents prove that Ms. Johnson received no financial assistance from her parents after age 18. She attended college on a full academic scholarship. She paid for her own apartment, her own car, and all her own expenses. Meanwhile, the plaintiffs paid full tuition for their younger daughter's college education and recently purchased an apartment for her. "Is this true?" Judge Williams asked my parents. They were both red-faced now. "Sarah needed more help," Mom said weakly. "So you provided extensive financial support for one adult child while providing none for the other, and now you want the child you didn't help to pay you $280,000? "It's not like that," Dad said. "Then what is it like, Mr. Johnson?" He couldn't answer. Judge Williams looked at the papers again. "This case is dismissed. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, you are responsible for all court costs and attorney fees. Parents cannot charge their children for basic parental care. This lawsuit is frivolous and without merit." The gavel came down. My parents sat there looking stunned. Sarah was crying in the back row. Their lawyer was already packing up his briefcase. I felt relieved but also sad. It was over, but at what cost? The fallout from the lawsuit was immediate and brutal. For my parents, anyway. Word got around fast. Uncle Mike called me the day after the trial. "Tiffany, I heard what happened in court. I can't believe your parents actually sued you. We had no idea they were planning this. If we'd known, we would have talked them out of it." Aunt Janet called next, then my cousins. Then people I barely knew from church. Everyone was shocked that my parents had tried to collect money from me for raising me. The whole family was talking about it. "They've lost their minds," Grandma Rose told me when she called. "I raised 5 kids and never thought about charging them for it. What kind of parents do that?" But the real damage was happening in their social circle. My parents went to the same church for 20 years. Mom was in the women's group, Dad helped with the church fundraisers. They had friends there, people they'd known forever, not anymore. Their reputation was destroyed. People who used to invite them to dinner parties and church events just stopped calling. Mom's book club kicked her out. Dad got removed from the church board. But the worst part for them was the money. They'd hired an expensive lawyer who charged them $15,000 for a case that got thrown out in one hearing. Then they had to pay court costs on top of that. Money they definitely didn't have, since they'd already spent their savings on Sarah's down payment. And that led to the biggest consequence of all. 3 months after the trial, Marcus called me with news. "You're not going to believe this. Your parents had to sell Sarah's apartment. They couldn't make the mortgage payments. Without your money, they couldn't afford it. The apartment went back on the market last week." I felt a weird mix of satisfaction and sadness. Sarah had lost her dream apartment, but it wasn't really her fault. She was just caught in the middle of our parents' insane plan. So where is she living now? Back to renting, from what I heard. She and her boyfriend found a small place across town. Poor Sarah, she'd probably been planning her whole life in that apartment, and now it was gone. But then again, she'd been perfectly willing to let me pay for it, so I didn't feel too bad. The months went by quietly. I went back to my normal life, saving money and looking at apartments online. I'd actually found a really nice 2-bedroom place that I was thinking about making an offer on. Then, 6 months after the trial, my phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Tiffany, it's Mom. Listen, I wanted to talk to you. I don't have anything to say to you. Please, just hear me out. I think we should meet and talk about everything. Maybe we can forget about all this and make peace." I almost laughed. "Make peace? You sued me for $280,000. That was a mistake. We were just upset about the apartment situation. We weren't thinking clearly." "A mistake? You hired a lawyer and dragged me to court." I know, but we're family, Tiffany. We should be able to work through this." "Family?" I sat down on my couch. "You want to talk about family?" Where was family when I needed help with college? Where was family when I was starting my career? Where was family when I was struggling to save money for my own place? We were there for you. No, you weren't, you were there for Sarah. You've always been there for Sarah. I was just the responsible one who didn't need help, remember? That's not true. It is true, and you know it. And now that your precious Sarah lost her apartment, suddenly you want to make peace? There was silence on the other end. Tiffany, please, can't we just move past this? No, we can't. You showed me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I'm not interested in pretending that didn't happen. But we're your parents. Parents don't sue their kids for raising them. Parents don't call their daughters old maids who don't deserve their own apartments. Parents don't demand that one child sacrifice everything for another child. We made mistakes, but these weren't mistakes, Mom. This is who you are, this is who you've always been. I just finally stopped making excuses for it. So that's it? You're never going to speak to us again? I looked around my apartment. My quiet, peaceful apartment where I could live my life without drama or guilt or people demanding that I sacrifice my dreams for someone else. I don't want anything to do with any of you, I said. I'm happy with my life. I'm successful, I'm independent, and I don't need your approval or your love if it comes with conditions. I hung up. She didn't call back. 2 months later, I closed on my apartment. It's beautiful, hardwood floors, big windows, a kitchen with granite countertops. Everything I dreamed of when I was saving all that money. The down payment was exactly what I'd been saving for years. The same money my parents thought I should spend on Sarah's mortgage. Instead, I spent it on my own future. I'm 33 now, still single, still focused on my career. Maybe Dad was right and I'll end up an old maid. But if that's what independence looks like, I'm okay with it. I've got my own place, my own life, and my own choices. No one can guilt me into paying for someone else's dreams or make me feel bad for putting myself first. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah ever figured out that our parents' plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of getting a free apartment paid for by me, she ended up with nothing but a rental and parents who destroyed their own reputation trying to force me to pay. But that's not my problem anymore. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they're family.